Okay, time to get started. For joining us today. I'm Brian Donahue. I'm the Deputy Director at Next Century Cities. Roxy will go into a little bit more about all the great work that our group does. But I also wanted to welcome you here to this beautiful space. Food is in the back. Exits are on each side here. And then the bathrooms, if you go out past the little sign-in table where you all got your name tags, and keep going, they're on the left there. So I'd like to introduce someone to speak a little bit toward the space that we're in, and welcome us, Noel Merriam, the Artistic Director of this space. So here we are.
Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here today. It's great to see all of you. I'd also like to thank the Deputy Director of the National Hispanic Cultural Center, Alberto Pussy, for helping with getting all of this set up for you, and our President and CEO of the National Hispanic Cultural Center Foundation, John Martinez, for helping to make this possible. How many of you have been here before to the National Hispanic Cultural Center? Okay, good. Well, as you know, the National Hispanic Cultural Center is a home for all of the arts that are related to Hispanic culture. And for us, it's very important to increase our footprint. Broadband is essential to doing that. One of my big goals for the upcoming year is to collaborate with all of our partners in performing arts and visual arts to create content that can be accessible to K-12 and college students throughout Albuquerque, and then to expand that to all of New Mexico. So thank you so much for what you're doing. Please come back sometime for a performance, whether it's dance, music, a concert, the opera, or come and visit our museum or the Torreon. We have all kinds of wonderful events up on our website. Thank you for being here.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here with us today. I would like to first acknowledge and say that we are gathered today on the Tiwa Pueblo People's Land, and my name is Roxana Barboza, Program Director at Next Century Cities, and I am here with Catherine Nicolao, Broadband Program Manager at the City of Albuquerque. We welcome you to the Build Broadband Together workshop. On behalf of Next Century Cities, we sincerely thank everyone who was able to be here and help us make this event a reality. We are excited to collaborate with the City of Albuquerque, the National Hispanic Cultural Center, and also thank you so much for the people that have been able to make it in person and also via Zoom. We wouldn't have been able to do it without you all. A little bit of background when it comes to Next Century Cities is that Next Century Cities is a nonprofit, nonpartisan 501c3 coalition of over 200 member municipalities working collaboratively with their local leaders to combat the digital divide. So when it comes to NCC's work, we're trying to ensure that our members do have the resources and tools to do so. And today, you'll learn about best practices being implemented in New Mexican communities from community leaders who are taking ownership of persistent digital divides happening in the area. We'll also explain tools that are available on the National Broadband Resource Hub for addressing local connectivity needs. Again, if you guys ever need anything from Next Century Cities, please contact us. You can contact me specifically at roxana@nextcenturycities.org. Next, I would like to invite Catherine Nicolao, Broadband Program Director at the City of Albuquerque, to say a few remarks and transition to the presentations. A bit of background when it comes to Catherine and her amazing work. Give me a second. She is leading city broadband initiatives and efforts while being a voice for all community members. Prior to her role at the city, Catherine was the External Affairs and Marketing Manager for Sacred Wind Communications. She was a member of the FCC's Communications, Equity, and Diversity Council Working Group, the City of Albuquerque's Information Services Committee, and is a board member for the New Mexico Technology Council. Catherine is a recipient of Albuquerque's Business First 40 Under 40 Award. Please join me in welcoming Catherine.
Gracias, Roxy. Good afternoon, everybody. Buenas tardes a todos. On behalf of the City of Albuquerque and the Broadband Office, I do want to thank you all for taking time out of your schedule. Some of you drove here, could be an hour, could have been more. And those of you who are on Zoom and joining virtually, thank you for making time in your day. I hope you're still productive since you're on Zoom. Maybe you can do some other stuff too. But thank you for being here and taking time to be with us today. I want to thank Next Century Cities, Roxy and Brian. It is their first time here in the beautiful state of New Mexico and City of Albuquerque. So welcome, guys, and thank you so much for all the work that you've done to put this together. I want to thank our speakers, Kimball and Jennifer. I really appreciate you guys. I know how busy you are, so making time to put presentations together, come here, talk to the group, I greatly, greatly appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you to Erica and Erica Eddy at the City of Albuquerque and her team and GOV-TV for all of your hard work. They're over there making sure people can stream this and get this on Zoom. Last but not least, thank you to the National Hispanic Cultural Center. I was looking for an event space, and I thought it would be great to do something here at this space, so I reached out. And actually, John Lopez and I had, is it Lopez or Martinez? I'm sorry, I'm so nervous that I'm getting your last name wrong. The CEO of the foundation, he and I had coffee, and it was his idea. He mentioned that we use this space for some broadband talks, and I thought that would be wonderful. So I reached out, and everyone has been so incredible to work with. So here we are in this lovely space. So now what I'm supposed to do actually is just jump into my presentation. Is that correct, Roxy? All right, so I said all my thank yous. Let me just transition real quick. My hope today for everyone is to take one of two takeaways from this event. I want you to either be inspired or to be re-energized. You are all here because you have a role in broadband. Doesn't matter how big that role is, how small that role is, if it's on the periphery or if it's deep down into broadband and you've been doing it for a while. We have a role to play as community members, as New Mexicans, as members of this state. So I hope that you leave here today inspired and re-energized. Tell you a little story real quick. So I picked up our 11-year-old daughter. My husband's here today, so thank you for coming and for your support. I picked up our 11-year-old daughter the other day from school, and she was telling me that she was learning, or I guess this time of year, the school has a winter coat drive for homeless students and for refugees, though, too. So we were talking about refugees, and she was asking me, about that term. I'm not going to get into a political conversation, but just about what that term means. What is a refugee? So she and I were talking about that, and I explained to her some of the situations and conditions in other parts of the world. And I could see that the world was on her shoulders. She got real serious, and she said, "Mom, what do we do to help people so that they don't have to go through these situations?" The nice thing is she's 11, me as her parent, I can kind of take that weight of the world off of her. Eventually she'll start playing with her sister and it'll go away. She doesn't have to carry that. But for those of us that work in broadband, oftentimes it feels like we have the weight of the world on us. And if you're in broadband and you don't feel like that, I hope that you come away inspired today. You shouldn't feel like that every day. I don't want you guys to get too stressed out here. But it's a big deal. And I say that because broadband is not just about fiber or wireless or satellite, right? Like that's the delivery method. Broadband is not just about 25.3 or 10.1 or 100 over 100. That could be a whole conference in of itself, right? But that's about measuring the speeds of broadband. So what is it about? Well, we know that it impacts everything. It impacts education, or lack thereof. It impacts economic development, the film industry here for New Mexico. It impacts the healthcare industry, telehealth, really any industry with workers. Erica and I were at the New Mexico Technology Council's Experience IT conference, and interestingly enough, a gentleman came up to the city's booth, and he was telling us that he used to live in Korea. And he was explaining his experience in terms of broadband in Korea. And he said that when he got back to the United States, it was like experiencing a third world because of his experience with broadband in the United States. I mean, listen, for those of us in Broad, for all of us here, it's not that surprising to hear, but the imagery of that, I've actually never heard anyone say any experience in the United States is like a third world experience. So we know that broadband impacts all these different things in life, all these different industries. But what do they all have in common? Right? So if you're here from the healthcare industry, if you're here from a nonprofit, if you're here from the state, if you're here from so many different industries, if you're a provider, what do we all have in common? Why should we all come together? So several reasons. We should come together because there's an unprecedented amount of funding, right, raining down on the United States to get this done. If we want to make sure, and I get this from people that I talk to, if we want to make sure that it gets spent the way that it should, where it should, to the people who need it, we all have a role to play. We all have a voice, and it's a responsibility that I think we should take pretty seriously. To me, that's called a holistic view. Everything that you kind of leave here with, a more holistic view. That we all have that role to play, it impacts us all, and now is the time to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and just talk a little bit about what we're doing at the City of Albuquerque with that holistic view in mind. See, I think I'm in charge of the clicker. Yes, I am. So at the City of Albuquerque, we are working to ensure Albuquerque's broadband future is accessible. It has to be accessible to people. It has to be affordable, and it has to include everybody. So what are we doing right now? I was on some webinar, I can't remember what it was, and the guy was saying, basically in broadband, maybe other industries too, we're literally building the plane while it's flying. I kind of thought about maybe giving you guys like something to build a plane with and then try to fly it, and I thought that'd be silly. But that's what we're doing. We're building the plane while we're flying it. Well, now it makes even more sense, right, why we all need to come together and help each other do this. So access, affordability, and inclusion. My job at the City of Albuquerque, and it's a new position. This position was created in February of this year. This administration and the Department of Technology and Innovation under Brian Osterloh, who's our director, has a great vision for broadband, has a great vision for access, affordability, and inclusion. And I'm done. Thank you. So Wi-Fi, I'll talk a little bit about free Wi-Fi, right? We see signs, we know that this was happening especially during the pandemic. It really started before the pandemic. A lot of cities were doing free Wi-Fi. And then during the pandemic, as we all know, the amount of free Wi-Fi hotspots in rural New Mexico, tribal New Mexico, and urban New Mexico. Well, we all have something in common. It just exploded. It was needed. So the City of Albuquerque is going to continue that mission. One might say, and by sometimes kind of think of Wi-Fi as, or hotspots, not Wi-Fi, hotspots, as a Band-Aid. One of the blessings about being in the position that I'm in is I've been able to talk to individuals that work in public housing. I was on a call with an individual at the city that's in charge of homeless shelters. These are vulnerable communities that don't have access, right? They may not even have a home where they can get access to internet in their home. Wi-Fi hotspots can benefit those vulnerable communities, so it's incredibly important. Fiber to the home. Here's another one under access. One of our goals at the City of Albuquerque is to the home. And in that effort, the very first license agreement, 4 months after I came onto the City of Albuquerque, the first license agreement between the City of Albuquerque and the first fiber to the home provider, Vexus, which is a company out of Texas, was signed. This is really special because this is like I just said, it's the first time our city will have fiber to the home. I have to mention, to give this some perspective, there are individuals that live on the Navajo Nation, 45 minutes from here. They have fiber to the home. There are individuals in rural New Mexico, not all rural, not all tribal. There are individuals in rural New Mexico who have fiber to the home. We too at the City of Albuquerque see the benefit and the need for that, and we are working towards that. We're very proud of it. Vexus Fiber participates in the Affordable Connectivity Program, and so they will have an entry-level offering of symmetrical speeds for $30 a month. So if an individual qualifies for the ACP program, you know, they could potentially get, I think it's 150 meg for free. Blows my mind. That's amazing. So actually, let's go to, I'll do it. Taking care of each other. In the vein and in the feeling and the spirit of taking care of each other, here at the City of Albuquerque, what we are doing is making sure that we continue messaging about how to afford broadband. And that's through the Affordable Connectivity Program, right? That's an FCC program that came out of the Emergency Broadband Benefit. The ACP, I think, was given $14 million to get funded. Started in June of 2020. And so if there's a whole list, if you were to go to fcc.acp, I think, it's the Affordable Connectivity Program. For individuals that are on SNAP, Medicaid, the free reduced lunch program, all kinds of different federal benefits, they would qualify for this discount on their internet. Again, we could have a whole conference on that just by itself. The point here is there is a resource and we need to let people know about it. Thankfully, the FCC recently came out with a NOFO. There is a grant for ACP outreach marketing. No, that was my phone. And so we're looking at that at the city too, but that's for municipalities. It could be for tribal communities. I don't know all the eligibility, but clearly the FCC is saying we see that more needs to be done so that more Americans sign up for this subsidy. So here at the city, one of my goals is to make sure that we do what we can to get our residents the program. What I did in October is I had the first Internet Resources Fair where I invited benefits events. It's interesting to me when somebody tells me, well, Catherine, do you think people need fiber? You think they need 100 over 100? That's not for me to say. That's not for me to say. If there's an unprecedented, nor is it, I would venture to say, nor is it for any of you to say. You can say what you need, but if there's an unprecedented amount of funding right now, and an opportunity, once in a generation opportunity, to get robust, resilient capacity, take us these future-proof networks that'll take us into our future as a city, then we have an opportunity and a responsibility right now to try to get that type of connectivity to all communities. And then that community member can decide for themselves what they want, what they can use, and what they need. So just increasing awareness around the benefits so that people can decide for themselves. Let's see. This one, somebody in here will definitely perk up because I get this, I heard this, that this is something she said. Broadband is not a provider issue. It's not a government issue. It's not a provider issue. It's not just you or you or you or you, okay? It's not all on you guys. It's on all of us as community members. And I get really excited about that. And that's why I want you guys to leave here kind of energized about what you do, because it's hard. Like I said, you could feel like the weight of the world is on you. When we're talking about economic development, healthcare, safety, all this stuff, you know, it can feel very heavy. But we're making a difference, and we can make a difference. I totally lost my train of thought. So it's a community issue. It's just it seems to me, I would venture to say that broadband is going through a community movement right now. And I think that that's really, really exciting to be a part of. Because broadband is one of the I think, people, and I'm just going to kind of tie it all back together to what I said in the beginning. What do we all have in common when it comes to broadband? When people have broadband, they can live with dignity. I think we probably all have some story. I know that I have several during the pandemic of people who did not have broadband. I'll tell you, if you imagine 2 kids' laptop, knowing that they have access to the internet at home and they can research that thing and they can get an A on their paper, they're good to go. But next to them, there's another kid. And that kid knows, I don't have a laptop and I don't have internet. And I'm probably not going to graduate. That's the type of thing that we really need to keep in mind when we have this holistic view of broadband. So it's about living with dignity. So I'm done. I'm going to go ahead and let Roxy introduce our next speaker.
Thank you so much, Catherine, for sharing. Next, I would like to introduce Jennifer Nevares, Director and Lead Educator at Community Learning Network, which she will highlight efforts in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Community Learning Network is an education nonprofit dedicated to building stronger communities through real-life learning and supporting community resiliency. Programs support transformational learning and community-driven projects, online education, media and tech skills training, economic and workforce development, and community and youth ambassador training. And so please join me in welcoming Jennifer Nevares.
Hi, everybody. Thanks. I'm an odd person to be in this conversation because I was born and raised in New Orleans, not New Mexico. Landed here actually as a refugee myself from Hurricane Katrina. I had one suitcase left to my name. I was in total trauma. And I happened to go to Starbucks in DeVargas Mall in Santa Fe while I was visiting and sat next to someone. I was there because I needed to use the hotspot and get online, and it changed my life forever. I sat next to an elder from Navajo Nation who was just there for the day to meet with the governor. But he looked at me from across the room and he said, "You're in root shock." I said, "What?" Because when you take a plant out of the earth and you move it, it can die or get sick and go into shock. And he said, "Humans are the same." And then he made a statement that changed my life forever. He said, "Well-being is nourished by being accountable to a people and a place." So from that conversation, we started a nonprofit, random stranger in the coffee shop, called Community Learning Network. Originally, we were dedicated to building stronger community through real-life learning, and we were dragging kids out into the community, dragging the community into school, and we were doing old-fashioned Adobe and feeding horses and connecting with elders, and we ended up, everywhere we went, realizing technology was an issue everywhere. So we morphed a little bit of projects and ended up kicking off efforts to support other kinds of Adobe online and platforms and workforce development to expand tech education access, employment, and enterprise development. So we run a lot of things. I'm a little bit like Forrest Gump, and as I said, we're a squash plant because we're listening for what the community needs. And everywhere we went, working with tons of community projects and other organizations, we hear the broadband saga, as we all know in this room. So the state also knew that this was an issue, and I just wanted to recap a few things in the broad scope of what's happening at the state level, then we'll drill down a little bit further. All of you in this room may already know that the state passed legislation, HB 10, SB 93, SB 377, to begin to develop and address some responses to deal with this. Director Kelly Schlegel came on board in July with the Office of Broadband Access and Expansion. That vision that's been set for the office is to achieve bold, affordable broadband solutions for New Mexicans that honor the state's rich heritage and elevate quality of life for all. The mission for the office, which just got started this past year, passionate leadership to drive bold, equitable, and inclusive broadband solutions, with values including being bold, honest, curious, innovative, respectful, collaborative, and analytically rigorous. Some of the staff that have come on board are listed here. That staff is building, and we're grateful to our interim cabinet secretary, Mantos, here today, and the Department of Information Technology, because they are the home currently for the Office of Broadband Access and Expansion. However, that legislation also established the Connect New Mexico Council and Connect New Mexico Council working groups. They're popping up like mushrooms because there's a lot to deal with. Connect New Mexico Grant Program, the Digital Equity and Inclusion Working Group, Eli's in the room, Mapping data and evaluation, again, Peter Mantos is in the room. Regional planning and community engagement, tribal working group, permits, polls, and attachments. These groups are meeting regularly, and if you would like to get in the conversation, please do. We popped up in this transition period a website for the community resources. Currently, it's an external website. As fast as we get information, we're putting it up, broadbandfornewmexico.org. And you'll see on that website, funding is already pouring into the state, and the state is already pouring money into the community. The first wave of funding from the Mexico Pilot Grant went out in November. Those proposals were due in September. The next proposals are due this month, and the third wave is in February. At the Tribal Broadband Connectivity Program from NTIA, multiple tribes were awarded in August, and more have been rolling in November 30th, November 17th, plus one of the awards from last year. I won't go through reading all of these because you can find them on broadbandfornewmexico.org. We've had funding coming in this year from USDA and the New Mexico Broadband Collective, which was an informal, originally organization of funders in the state that fund lots of things. Broadband keeps arising in every topic, whether it's health or animal safety, food security. So they pooled their efforts and have been hosting summits, surveys, and gathered funds to do some small grants to communities that are most in need. We also have broadband coalitions popping up all over the place. Not all of them are online to let us know what's going on, but we encourage you to start a coalition if you don't already have one. Let us know if you have one, and get involved in community mobilizing, because as the state gears up to respond to the federal resources coming our way, it takes everyone in the community to get this process rolling and to ensure that it's effective. So Doña Ana Broadband is an example. They started an informal coalition. They ran surveys, they've done outreach, they've had press and materials. They've put everyone at the table, the community college, the health workers, the promotoras, staff from the civic and county agencies, community businessmen and women, Chamber of Commerce have come together, met regularly, and they have mobilized resources for their community to begin to address both the needs and brainstorm what we're going to do about it. Interestingly, there's also what I need to share with you, because it's coming soon, is what's ahead for all of our coalitions and the state to meet what we call DEA and BEAD. Some of you already know about this. It may be repetitive, but DEA is the Digital Equity Act, and BEAD is the broadband strategic, mostly focused on infrastructure, but with a workforce development element added. For New Mexico, the planning funding was applied for in the summer. Like all the states, we will be getting funding for planning our developing our digital equity plan and submitting it within a year. And we will be getting funding to put together our BEAD plan and submitting it within 9 months. Yep. Yay! Great. That's great news, but it also means the clock starts ticking today. And so what I needed to share with you, because this topic was building broadband together, is that we are not allowed as a state to submit these plans without all of your voices included. The planning process requires engagement and input, identification of barriers, identification of the most unconnected communities, and proposed solutions from all of our stakeholders. So the DEA plan will require regional meetings, community convenings, listening sessions, resident surveys, asset inventories, and none of it can be done without all of us. So I just popped that up to warn you what's coming and to share. I was a teacher by trade originally. I also worked in industry for SAIC. So I have this weird background between nonprofit and community-oriented and business and industry. And here I sit at the broadband table, dragged into conversations over the years and hitting broadband challenges everywhere. When I lived out in Sedacon, which is known as Hogback, it was impossible to get online. And the grandmother that lived on the property where I lived, she used to drive 59 miles to Farmington to use the library to get online and read email. So out and about, everywhere we went, we were hitting these barriers and walls and challenges. So I was listening, oh, what do we need to do? We hosted the Indigenous Connectivity Summit in 2017 in Santa Fe. We hooked up with ISOC, the Internet Society, Google, Aaron, ICANN, and a random group of folks from the community who came up with this need over Huevos Rancheros, I think, at Pascual's. We decided to do it, and 9 months later, we had this event with 180 attendees looking at how do we build broadband in rural and indigenous communities if we don't know what else to do and there's no one to help us. From that, when the pandemic hit, I got sucked into the homework gap team. Lots of folks were meeting regularly to discuss the situation and challenges our students were facing. Because I was a teacher previously, that was right up my alley of concern and interest. I'm also a grandma, and I'm watching students and young people struggle to participate in learning. So I'm on the calls. We call the ITDRC, Information Technology Disaster Resource Center. They're a nonprofit out of Texas. They responded to our call for help. And over the next, 3 to 6 months maybe, with Kimball and others on calls every morning at 7:30, they probably installed 180 hotspots for our state, free of charge, and many of those are still operating today. So libraries, fire stations, bank parking lots, you name it, they put them in. We called them again when the fire struck. They showed up and built information systems and communications emergency setups for the first responders, the fire department, and some of the refugees from that event. It's a long, drawn-out process of recovering that, but their help has been immeasurable, and they just showed up. And I share those examples because out of need, listening to each other and caring for each other, random people, even a grandma like me, can make a difference. And our communities are going to need all of you and all of those unknown champions like me and others who care, who are struggling, and who want to help. So our job now is to figure out how to help each other, and build the networks and systems so we can. I would say if you care about connectivity, the big question is, what can I do to help? Register for the OBI newsletter, and we call it OBI, not Obey, just for fun, Office of Broadband Access and Expansion. And you can get onto the newsletter at broadbandfornewmexico.org. You can take the MAP challenge before January 13th, 2023, that's a typo. You have to go online, check your location, you can read up on it. It's a very serious and important task that all communities across the nation are scrambling to ensure the mapping is done properly, and it will affect the algorithms that the federal government use to allocate funding to our state. Millions of dollars are at stake if your home is not on the map. So that is homework. Definitely go home, check the map. Are you on the map? Are your relatives on the map? And are you employees on the map? And if you sign up for the newsletter, we'll be sending out in the next few weeks information from the state about the MAP challenge and what more you can do about it. And last but not least, to participate in regional convenings, in listening sessions, and planning efforts ahead. Support and or register a broadband coalition. And again, you can get there at broadbandfornewmexico.org. We are hoping and expecting to start that mega series of community convenings and regional meetings but listening sessions have already started across the state in the last year. We are also announcing Broadband for New Mexico Day at the legislature on February 15th, the day after Valentine's Day, because we love broadband. There'll be a press conference at 9 in the morning. There'll be things going on all day and events from 12 to 1 to celebrate and showcase what's working, to build opportunities to learn from each other, to gather input for the community, and help identify our barriers and build some recommendations for how we're going to solve those. And I think I just wanted to give a quick shout out to ProTech for that same kind of responsiveness, and, which isn't on the slide, the Cool Network, which Kimball, we give you kudos for that, cultivating our own to lead, because as we expand our broadband access, we need the people that can lay the fiber, dig the trenches, manage the networks. Cultivating our own to lead is building that workforce within the tribal communities. And ProTech launched a training boot camp last year. They've already trained 62 fiber optic technicians. So for any ISPs in the room, see me after this, I'd love and how we can connect you with some of the training and education opportunities, and how we can connect you with some of the training and education opportunities or build them with you. And last but not least, I have a quick little video before we turn it over to Kimball. Thanks. MP4 coming up. Just quick and short. You can see where we need internet in this photo. Ta-da! Turn over this.
Thank you, Jennifer, for sharing. Last but not least, I bring up and introduce Kimball Sikowaptiwa, Chief Technology Officer at the Santa Fe Indian School. A member of the Hopi tribe, Kimball has decades of experience working to bring connectivity to tribal schools and libraries. Her efforts were recently featured in the New York Times and by Good Morning America. She has been a vocal advocate for getting all students connected, which is especially critical on tribal lands where 4 out of 10 students lack access to broadband at home. She is a former Woodrow Wilson MBA and Education Leadership Fellow. In addition to her Stanford degree, she holds an MBA from the University of New Mexico. Please join me in welcoming Kimball.
That's so fancy. I don't think anybody's read a profile on me before. And it's very hard to follow Catherine always. And I'm never going to stop thinking of Jennifer as a feisty grandma after this. But I am Kimball. I'm the CTO at the Santa Fe Indian School. And I'm also the interim chair of the New Mexico Connect Council that was mentioned. And just really, you know, I've been in the broadband space now for over 10 years, maybe upwards of 15. I'm not really sure how I landed here. I think I was trying to get high-speed, fiber-based internet in downtown Santa Fe and finally stumbled across it. And I kind of feel like broadband chose me, and someday I'm going to figure out, you know, what that means and what I want to do when I grow up. But we have made traction here, and I want to share progress. And I hope that this tribal story will resonate as a rural story for New Mexico, and also to help us reimagine tribal relationships as partners. You know, it's probably disconnected, you know, state in the country, or, you know, we vie for that title. It goes up and down. But because so many times we've been billed around as tribes. We haven't been engaged in the conversation. We're got the direct routes, you know, on major of our interstate thoroughfares. If we had been working together sooner, maybe we would have more resilient, robust broadband fiber routes in New Mexico. So when I started this work, it was really to solve my problem on campus. And then when we did, we were excited to build out our curriculum because Santa Fe Indian School is owned and operated by the 19 Pueblos. We're an off-reservation boarding school of about 700 students from the Pueblo, Apache, and Navajo tribes in New Mexico. And we were engaging in curriculum development for native languages. So 10 years ago, you know, when we had our Zuni teacher call in sick, you can't just call one of those in Santa Fe very easily. So it was such a no-brainer to use video conferencing back to the home communities. But we were still pre-Zoom then, and it wasn't feasible. So when I got the high-speed internet on campus, then we looked out and said, let's do this, tribes. And it was that all the Pueblos were too slow to talk back. So that's when my leadership is like, just go help. So we leveraged the FCC E-rate program initially to connect 6 Pueblos and their tribal schools and libraries. And while we were solving for high-speed affordable internet, we quickly realized we were doing something more. We were empowering and connecting the communities. We had to pay extra. Can't do that with E-rate. But that was well worth it. And then also we realized by connecting the schools and libraries together, we were not only connecting us to our higher education opportunities, because we're connected with UNM, and I'll show that here in a second, but we were connecting to each other. So as a private cloud, what can we do to uplift our curriculum in a way where our very sacred content is not bouncing all over the internet? And that's where I kind of realized what we were doing was creating a Pueblo education network, which was really exciting. It was like it was a paradigm changer, because not only is broadband not great in New Mexico, but Indian education is not great nationally. And that's a big factor in what the New Mexico, the education statistics also reflect. We found during COVID that not 40% of our students were having internet problems, but 90 at that 25-3 benchmark. And it was our only students in town that had the adequate resource for remote learning. So that's kind of our starting point for the last 2 years of work, I suppose. And then you have the statistics, and none of those are going to surprise anybody. I think we all know that. But when we put in these education networks, then what I learned was we're also creating an opportunity for tribes to develop their capacity in this broadband space. And it's doable. So how do we uplift that effort while also meeting our educational goals? So this is the evolution of the network. As I mentioned, starting in the E-rate modernization era in 2015, we put in the first Haymasia and Middle Rio Grande routes. Each one of those is about 60 miles. We came back, and with the support of Governor MLG, Michelle Lujan Grisham, she supported a build that we're doing right now. I'm coming from Santa Fe down to Bernalillo, so that's an important route for all of New Mexico, right? That's actually connecting the north and the south. And that's something that my friend Alex here, who's been in broadband for a while, when he first met us around 2017, he was just like, I can't believe you guys are doing this. I've seen projects fail with the same idea for the past 20 years. And I think it's because we were working from within community. So the 4 tribal nations it took us to pass, we knew how to get the resolutions and work with the governors and the councils to work together and see the common benefit to build the networks. I'm happy to say that we were just received another NTIA grant. So we're going to be building from Albuquerque to Isleta, down around the Horns, all the way to Socorro, back up Highway 60, Acoma, back up to I-40, and then down to Zuni in the next 2 years. So at that point, we'll have about 500 miles. And then what? And then once it puts us on this map. That is so cool. This is the Pacific Wave, the Research and Education Network map from, I just got back from SC22. And I highlighted Albuquerque ABQG here. the Research and Education Network, and we're connected to that. So now all of a sudden, our tiny little Pueblo schools, it's a Guam, but we can. We're on the map now in a whole different way than tribes have ever been connected, let alone Indian education. So I look to anybody and everybody in this room to do something, help us do something great with it. You know, I know it's cool. We put the infrastructure in, and now let's do the programming where we really impact the human lives and to support our students to create applications and services that, you know, we haven't even thought of yet. You know, it's going to be a multi-generational impact. I mentioned the importance of connecting the communities at the same time as we put in the education networks. And it turns out in our pueblos and maybe the rural communities as well, is that we have similar anchor institutions. So if we approach it from that angle, then we can figure out how to solve for Indian Health Service. We can figure out how to get all of the communities connected holistically. Sometimes it's fiber, sometimes it's wireless. But, and tribes, you know, these are sovereign nations. So their interests, whether it's ownership, a partnership, wireless, fiber, that all has to be taken into consideration. But if we can work with them flexibly, then we can come up with those community solutions. And through COVID especially, we saw the tribes step up. It was the tribes where the fiber backbone was already in place pre-COVID, that for hundreds of thousands of dollars in their treasury funds, could put in fixed wireless. Because when we went into COVID, and I'm not sure if you know this or not, we physically barricaded our borders, the back roads, the front roads, and it was people couldn't come in, but people also couldn't go out. And then our tribal libraries closed, and that's where people, especially the youth, were going to get, were going for their computing needs, for computer access and internet access. And then there was like a lot of the artisans, you know, there were no shows, there was like a lot of income loss. So the mobile hotspots and the prepaid phones that were a core way that the community members were accessing the internet, that was gone. And obviously McDonald's and Starbucks were gone. There was no you know, unnecessary travel for if you weren't an essential worker. So we were locked in our homes essentially, and you had what you had. And as I mentioned, our students didn't have. We eked by with hotspots, you know, the best we could, and Chromebooks. But where we saw the movement was in those communities who invested in the fixed wireless, where like 3 to 6 months later, they could stand it up. We saw that at Jemez and Santo Domingo came up first. So if we went out in March 2020, right, with COVID, and then we would be out the full next year, and then beyond for hybrid. The Pueblo of Santo Domingo bought and installed a fixed wireless network for every resident before August 2020, and they started school with that. And that's the kind of community solution and partnerships. And they couldn't even get like the mounting kits for the homes, for the equipment. So they went to the hardware store and they bought supplies and they set up a tent and they manufactured their hardware. And then that gave them an opportunity to employ unemployed tribal members as a revenue stream. And now that they're supporting their own ISP services, they the ones that were really interested in the ISP or technician as a career stayed on with the tribe as tribal employees. So it really built out a whole operation. I think in one of these bullets that we're seeing with the funding that 10 more pueblos are going to be putting in the last mile solutions right now. And we're starting to participate as ACP providers, right? The American Connectivity Program. So that's going to be important for sustainability because these grants will buy you the infrastructure, but they're not going to help us take care of it forever. So where we look to the future is, and I wanted to kind of tie this back to this conversation because this isn't just a tribal story. You know, we're coming down from the Pueblos and we're connecting to the carrier hotels here in Albuquerque. We're also working with state and DOT and other initiatives to do handoffs. I'm trying to get to El Paso and Clovis for, out-of-state connections for redundancy and resiliency. But to get, for instance, that build that we're going to be doing in Isleta, we can come up the highway, or, you know, we can come up through the South Valley. We can be part of a solution, a metropolitan solution, and that's what I think these regional networks afford us. Also, what we're doing is working with the state education network. So Santa Fe Indian School, we're going to probably be one of the nodes up north, the Santa Fe node, to get started. And then we'll have our facilities here in Albuquerque, where we're kind of aggregating the tribal traffic. So we have 2 locations that will be part of that middle mile footprint for the state. And I think that's also important as we bring all these educational interests together. Similarly, we're able to enable the state agency traffic, so they, you know, I appreciate a contiguous network. You know, so how do we work together with our tribal networks to facilitate, you know, that agency footprint? Because, like I said, we landlock Albuquerque and Santa Fe pretty darn well. Like, we need to work together, and just because we've never done it at this level doesn't mean we can't. And I know with the council and with Kelly, it's been a really positive relationship to work with the tribes and an intentional effort, and I'm hoping that we can build on that. So I'll stop there. I don't know if that was 10 minutes or not. Okay. And thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Kimball, for sharing. Now I would like to invite all speakers to come up for Q&A. And so now I will open it up to the audience. My colleague, Brian Denogo, who's back with me, Deputy Director at NCC, will pass along the mic to whoever wants to ask a question. Let's see, who has the first question? Well, I'll be Brian for the moment.
Thanks a lot, Roxy. Carl Copen with Addison. Kimball, I'm going to go right to you. On the build for some of the new tribal networks, so for example, Albuquerque to Santa Fe, is that a new build, or is that following existing fiber conduit or existing carriers, or is that a new build?
It's a completely new build. Oh, it's working. I'm not close enough, I guess. No, it's a completely new build. We're putting in 288 strand count coming down on the interstate.
So, Kimball, I'll just talk about this, you guys can hear me. So, Kimball and I have known each other. Addison is a data center company that's doing work with the labs and things like that. One of the other, as many of you know, groups that is underrepresented in their fiber capacity and capability are the national labs. Right now, the labs cannot go directly between Los Alamos and Sandia. Strategically, that's a huge issue. If the tribal folks are going to lead some of that build and new capacity, there are additional funds to supplement the awards that you're receiving from the feds, from a different federal pile. The feds, the other side of the federal government, wants to go deeper and more resilient than a commercial requirement. But it would be very synergistic to do a one build policy. And there's another pot of money out there. Obviously, big issues, crossing tribal right-of-ways, getting to Los Alamos and Sandia. But I just want to put that out there. If you're going to be one of the early adopters in new fiber builds, and this extends throughout the state and neighboring states, but specifically between Albuquerque and Santa Fe, and hopefully on to Los Alamos, we need to coordinate, because there's another pot of money that will be able to supplement those efforts.
Thank you. I agree, and I would even argue that we're putting so much emphasis on this BEAD mapping, and then BEAD acquisition, and then BEAD spending down. But these more specific pools are incredibly important to tap into, because BEAD is going to leave, there's some pretty tough, high barriers to participation, and not all of these community projects or specialized projects are going to fit. But you might have this one with the labs, you might have some with public safety or homeland security, and if we can work across those other funding sources, I think that's where we're going to find that holistic solution. So thank you for that.
Just Is part of the tribal plan to be open to those type of partnerships, or?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Great, okay, thanks, Kimball.
Who has the next question? Okay, so we do have a question from Zoom. With this initiative for broadband and many ISPs involved, and just saw the New Mexico Workforce logo, tribal training on fiber, and many trends already in place with New Mexico Workforce Solutions, it would be a major loss for New Mexico not to have this opportunity to train high school, post-secondary on the art of fiber plant broadband technologies and keep these trades in New Mexico and not bring outside companies to build out this infrastructure. What is being done or assuring that New Mexico is first in assuring our talent is trained with this program and keep the revenue within New Mexico? I know that was a big one.
That's a great question. So that's a big component of what we're talking about is the broadband workforce. There's multiple people in this room that can talk about it from different angles. I will say from the city of Albuquerque's perspective, we fully recognize the need, and so we are in talks with anyone and everyone in terms of how the city can either be at the forefront, at the back of, helping in the middle. It doesn't really matter. We know that it needs to get done, and it's incredibly important. The value there is jobs for New Mexicans, training the future workforce, getting our kids to be able to take these jobs, getting people who can do it now trained on those jobs. So we fully see and feel that with you, and so the city is working on that, talking to the state. I'm talking to the Wireless Infrastructure Association. I'm talking to a consultant that does this in Puerto Rico. There's a lot of synergy between Puerto Rico and New Mexico, actually. But again, there are other individuals in this. Jennifer's one of them. She has a really cool story about what she's doing. One of her slides mentioned it.
Just to add, protectsantafe.com is the website that Santa Fe Community College was using for their boot camp program. It's not just fiber. There's other programs there in film and other things. But I will add a shout out to the County of Santa Fe, because they were the ones that said, we're going to need our technicians trained from our own community to steward and manage this infrastructure. They invested ARPA funds to pay for the first fiber optic training in Santa Fe last January. I was on the January 6th call where the Santa Fe Community College, the county, the city were all talking about doing this, and they said, let's launch it the end of January 29. And we all laughed and like, are you kidding? That's like no time. Who will come? Sure enough, they had over 191 applications. They ended up running 3 cohorts and teamed with Luna County, who ran a cohort in August. So the BEAD program does include some funding for workforce development. The counties and cities are aware, and I did want to just speak to Santa Fe for a second, because they too have instituted an agreement with Vexus, who will be coming in to build out fiber in the community there. Vexus is coming to the table with the community college to talk about their needs with the city and the county. So there's a lot of community collaboration that's going on to look at what's going to be needed, what we need to do in the interim, and how we build our workforce. That is not solved, but it's underway, and I know there are folks in the room, including C&M Ingenuity and others, that are working collectively with their communities to begin to identify and build the systems so we can prepare workers and teams to mobilize this infrastructure, but also to manage it in the long run. And again, I speak to Kimball's cool program as well, just another one that's cohort-driven and long-term.
Yeah. And, you know, for our cohort, we were creating custom courses, but if Protect's working and having success in this space, why not just partner and use Protect? So there's a lot of synergies that we're working on. And this question from the chat might be as close to something I try to mention about our state effort, so I'm just going to jump on it. As we do this broadband work, we're not trying to profoundly change New Mexico, right? We're not trying to bring in large swaths of people from other states and build strip malls and, you know, become this, just to do it. We want to protect New Mexico communities. We want to uplift our people with the job skills. We want to uplift our New Mexico tech companies by using them and growing them. And we want to keep New Mexico, whether it's tribes, whether it's an artist community up in the mountains, whether it's the Hispanic communities. So if we can approach it from that point of view, we can start making these decisions going to this federal funding. That vision and mission and core value set, quite honestly. But I think you in this room, you know, you're invested in New Mexico. So I think it's also, as we go into community engagement and where there's opportunity to provide the state feedback, whether it's OBI or the council, and hold us accountable to that decision making, I think we're going to need that. And I think that's going to have to be a collective effort so we can really get to the best impact, the quality of life impact we want for New Mexicans.
So let's give it to the speakers. Thank you, speakers, for sharing your projects to the community. Now I would like to transition to an overview of the National Broadband Resource Hub. So just give us a few seconds so we can put up the slides, and yeah, it'll be like a 5-minute overview so we can get to the informal networking portion of the event. Okay, perfect. Again, my name is Roxy Barboza, NCC's Program Director, and so today I'll be doing an overview of the National Broadband Resource Hub. And so when it comes to the National Broadband Resource Hub, it is a free online community for nonprofit and government leaders that are trying to expand broadband access in their community. And so when it comes to the platform, it has 3 resources that communities can take part of. And again, this is a free resource online. We have the resource conversations, and last but not least, we have the help desk. And I'll give more details on what that entails. But right now, I'll give you a more like the history, who's involved, and all that good stuff. And so when it comes to the National Broadband Resource Hub, it is funded by philanthropy, but led by nonprofit leaders such as Next Century Cities, the Pew Charitable Trusts, and the Center for Rural Innovation. When it comes to the platform, the resource library does bring together hundreds of broadband guides, how-tos, reports, all created by the team of Next Century Cities, Pew Charitable Trusts, and the Center for Rural Innovation. And so, as a FYI, this library is a living collection, so as new resources are being developed by trusted organizations and leaders, they're all being implemented into this resource hub. Again, when it comes to the community conversations, it brings together government and nonprofit leaders to connect with each other and, you know, share what is being implemented in their area. So great ideas can flourish, of course. And so we do this by minimizing the barriers to connect with peers, regionally and nationally. And so that platform has a lot to do having online chats or having Zoom webinars for our audience. And when it comes to the help desk, those that are looking for more in-depth guidance and answers, we do have a help desk dedicated to helping you go on with your projects or answer any questions that you may have on any resource. Let's see. And again, I know this was like a very brief overview, but basically, if you guys want to learn more about the Broadband Hub, the people on Zoom and in person do have a how to join the community guide in back of your guys' flyer with the speakers, so feel free to visit broadbandhub.org, click on the community link, and of course sign up and apply there, and of course that's where you'll have access to the Broadband Resource Hub. Again, just wanted to give a short, brief overview of the Resource Hub so you guys can get going with the informal networking. But other than that, if you guys have any questions, please let me know. But if you guys don't, we're more than happy to chat one-on-one after this presentation. Does anybody have any question? Yes.
So my name's Otto Cara. I'm from Silver City, New Mexico, representing Western New Mexico University. And I actually have a comment about the workforce development part because I'm here with Bill Halverson from CNM, Albuquerque, right? And I guess one of the questions I have right away is how many people in this room represent an organization or group of people that are south of the 40 and west of the 25? One person? And where are you from? Sorry. Truth or consequences. Okay, so you're on the 25. Okay, so I mean 20 miles west is what I'm asking. Anyone else? And the reason I bring that up is because I'm representing the only person who's not on the 25, right? I mean, who's actually west of there. And we don't have any infrastructure. And one of the big challenges that we have as a rural community, as you do actually, is how do we get broadband to be reliable for new businesses that need to invest in our communities, right? And so when we don't have the ability to take care of broadband, not just put it into place, but maintain it, we can't attract business because no one's going to be there. No one's going to want to be there if it takes a week to fix a simple problem, right? So you have to have certain redundancies in place. So you have to have a workforce, right? So Bill and I have been working on a workforce grant in the past. We tried with the Strengthening Community Colleges, Western's both community college and a university. And the big roadblock for us, everything we've been talking about was part of our conversation, and we had gone far. We were working with the WIA, by the way, Rick and Thacker probably, some of those folks. And, you know, we've got all these contacts and everything, but the thing that killed us, you have to have not just the thing that ProTech does at Santa Fe Community College with fiber splicing, which will get you certified, but you have to have 125 hours for that kind of certification to get employed. And employers need that. They won't hire you if you don't have those 125 hours. That apprenticeship needs to be in place. You have to have that relationship with the employer. So I give a shout out to all the employers in this space, whether it's fiber or wireless connectivity. We need you to talk to us because we couldn't find you. We went all over the place in New Mexico to find a group, a consortium of broadband employers that could work with the universities or the community colleges, the higher ed part of the state, to get our learners those hours so that they were hireable. That is the roadblock for us. We can do everything else. The WIA can give us curriculum. Other groups can give us curriculum. We got resources. That's not something we can fake, you know. So I just give a shout out, and any ideas on that would be welcome. And again, my name's Otto Cara, the only Otto in southern New Mexico probably. So it's easy to find me at WNMU. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Otto. Again, if you guys ever need to be connected with anyone, we do have, again, the community conversations, so you guys, you know, can have those in-depth, one-on-one conversations with individuals that you need to be connected. But if you guys don't have any questions, I would like to proceed with some closing remarks. And I will be inviting Catherine towards the end. She will do her closing remarks as well. But first, I would like to thank all of you on behalf of the organizers and partners of this event. I would also like to express my gratitude for Catherine, who's not just a partner for this event with me, but who make this event a reality. As you heard from our speakers and participants, the projects that are happening in New Mexico are successful because of these local leaders, and not just these local leaders, but you all. And so as we conclude, Zoom attendees, this is the end of your portion since we will be transitioning into the in-person networking, but thank you for joining in, and please use Next Century Cities as a resource. At NCC, we are here to support local leadership, elevate community level perspectives, and provide resources that you need to change connectivity outcomes. Thank you so much, each one of you, for making your broadband programs a priority. And now I will pass it on to Catherine.
Thank you, Next Century Cities. Thank you, Roxy and Brian. I didn't really plan anything for closing remarks. I said thank you. Thank you for making the time to come here, to sit here, to listen, to be on Zoom. We're going to do some networking right now. If you guys do not feel inspired or energized by Kimball, by Jennifer, by Roxy, there's so much in here. I'm looking at all of you guys, and I want you guys all to meet each other, schedule a coffee, talk to each other. I'm super excited, and thank you guys for being here.